I'd like to show some of the enhancements that have been added to Illuminated Cloud starting with version 2.0.7.9. The first one of these enhancements is one that I've heard about from quite a few people. If you've used the JetBrains version control integration, you're probably familiar with the Status Bar Widget. As you can see, it shows the current branch for your version control system that is based on the current file. So as you switch files, if that ends up moving across version control repositories and branches, you would actually see that update as you're moving through files. The idea is that you always know the active branch. Additionally, when you click on this, you have the ability to actually do some version control operations like creating branches, switching branches very quickly and efficiently, integrating across branches or merging across branches, diffing across branches, things like that. So I've created a similar status bar widget for Illuminated Cloud, but instead of branches, it's the connection. So in this case, we can see that while this file is highlighted, that the module that contains this file is configured for the DF17 OAuth connection. If I move through files, and in this case I've got a multi-module project with some modules based on Scratch orgs, some modules based on an org-centric model against OAuth connections, and one module based on a native connection and metadata format, more the traditional type of non-Salesforce DX development model. As I move through these files, if you watch the widget, you'll notice that now it's moved and it says, okay, now the connection is Dreamhouse while you're working with this file. Now the connection is eBikes while you're working with this file, and you can see that it's also a Scratch org connection. And as you're working with this file, it's a native connection called DF17. If I move to a file that is not within a Salesforce configured module, you can see that the widget pretty much just goes away. So at a glance, you always have a good idea of what will happen if you do, for example, a deploy on save. Where is that deploy going to occur without having to go and open another dialog or anything like that. Similar to the version control widget, if you click, it's going to actually bring up some additional details. In this case, it's going to show a set of connections, again, as always, segregated by project, those that are already associated with the project, and global. This is not the full set of configured connections. This is the set of connections that are valid to be used with the module associated with the active file. So, for example, this is an org-centric module. This file is from an org-centric module working against an OAuth connection. It cannot be used with native connections that expect metadata format, so it's only showing Salesforce DX-based connections. If I open up the current configured connection, which is the DF17 OAuth, you can see that I could open the connection in a browser, or I could edit the connection if I needed to change some of its properties in the Illuminated Cloud Connection Manager. If I look at a different connection than the currently configured connection, I get another option, set as connection. So similar to being able to very quickly and efficiently switch branches in the version control widget, you can switch connections very easily. So I'll just click this. Do I want to update this module with the selected connection? Yes. It found an existing offline symbol table. If not, it would prompt you to copy one or generate one. I will go ahead and accept that. It set up the SDK, and that's it. I've switched connections on this module. We can see that it is now against demo. If I opened up the project settings, we could actually see that that first one is now against the demo connection, and it's already got an offline symbol table. So that quickly I was able to switch connections. If you were working with a multi-module project where multiple modules use the same connection, this is generally the use case of developing multiple managed packages in a single development org. That's out of the scope of this demo, explaining that configuration. But if you were doing that, what you would find is that it would actually prompt you to switch all modules that use the same connection that you're trying to switch. You could either do the single module, all modules, or cancel. That will support the use case of moving to another single org, for example, if you need to populate a demo org, or breaking it apart if you're trying to populate and manage the first generation managed packaging organizations. I mentioned that this is not the full set of connections. If you do need to access the full set of connections, you've always had access to the Open Connection drop down on the toolbar. One thing that I do want to show you with regard to that is, of course, I don't really like to take my fingers off the keyboard if I can avoid it. There's actually now a keyboard shortcut for that. So it is going to be a little bit of finger gymnastics like almost all of the Illuminated Cloud specific keyboard shortcuts. It's going to be on Windows and Linux, Control-Shift-Alt, and then O. On the Mac, it's going to be Command Opt Shift and then O. and then you can just choose a connection. You can actually filter. So for example, if I wanted to do Dev Hub, as I type down, it'll actually filter, and then I just hit enter and it would open it in the browser. Make it very, very quick for you to actually open up any of your connections in a browser without taking your hands off the keyboard. And then the last enhancement that's in 2.0.7.9 is actually to the most recent major feature that was added, which was debug level and trace flag configuration. One piece of feedback that I received from users since releasing this is that in densely populated orgs with a lot of users and/or a lot of Apex classes and triggers, finding the right traced entity was cumbersome. So now, if for example, you need to create a new trace flag against a class, as soon as the drop-down pops up, you can begin typing, just as you saw with the org connections. You can begin typing like shopping list mobile view controller, and it will do type-down filtering, and then you can just hit enter to select that. Similarly, if you were trying to choose users in an org with an extremely large number of users, this org does not have a large number, but I can just start typing something. The search will actually work against either the display name or the username in with users, and the class or trigger name or the namespace for classes and triggers. Obviously, being able to search by username is handy because you could actually have two Jane Does in the same org, but the usernames are going to have to be globally unique. So just hit enter and that will take that. So hopefully between these, that will make things more efficient, make workflows more smooth as you're switching between connections, as you're setting up trace flags, as you're opening up your organizations. As always, I'm open to feedback. Feel free to send over any feedback you have about these enhancements or other enhancements you'd like to see, and thank you for your time.